Prime Minister Mark Carney spoke with Canada's premiers a day after his Oval Office sit-down with U.S. President Donald Trump.
There's a consensus among the premiers that the Prime Minister did well yesterday to baseline a new relationship between Canada and the United States.
No one expected to sign a deal, but I'll tell you, it was a massive step forward that he went down there, and they seemed to be getting along quite well, and he said they were getting along, so I think this is huge compared to the last Prime Minister.
So this was the first minister's call since the election, but when they met prior to the campaign, Carney asked the premiers to identify projects of national significance. Alberta and Ontario have both weighed in publicly with their priorities. And today, Manitoba's premier released his 5 projects, which include developing a trade corridor through the port of Churchill, completing the twinning of the Trans-Canada Highway, and investing in critical minerals infrastructure. Wab Kinew is the premier of Manitoba, and he joins me now. Premier, it's good to see you again. Thanks for being here, sir.
Thanks for having me back.
So Doug Ford, watching the Mark Carney-Donald Trump meeting from afar, said today that he thought it was a good start on a new relationship. How do you assess what happened yesterday?
Yeah, I think the Prime Minister is getting good reviews here in Manitoba. Most of the Jets fans that I've spoken to have said that they respected the composure and the general approach that Prime Minister Carney took. We all know that these tariffs, whether it's the tariffs from China that are in effect right now, the American tariffs on steel and auto, which, you know, we have a steel industry here in Manitoba, so we're very concerned about it, that these are serious, serious threats. And I'm a big believer in the saying, relate before you negotiate. And having our federal leader there building a new relationship that'll hopefully be able to advance in negotiations, I think is something that all Canadians can get behind.
Right, so relate before you can negotiate. Did you get the sense that that interpersonal dynamic was a good one? Because you don't want to make too much of that, but with President Trump being such a transactional guy, it feels like it really matters in this particular relationship.
Yeah, and I think most Canadians see it that way, which is, I think, why Canadians were responding to the composure that the Prime Minister showed. At the same time, we know that there's some bedrock fundamentals here. We're always going to be neighbors with the U.S. We share a lot in common, not just the economy, but defense, culture, cross-border shopping. So there's a lot of people who'd like to see the relationship get back to normal, if you will, even though the idea that we're never going to be the 51st state is something that we're all rock solid on. So us just having this opportunity to have a bit of a reset on the relationship side, and then hopefully start to see some progress in bringing the Trump administration back to a more realistic relationship that's sustainable over the long term. I think that's what we want to see. We don't want to see tariffs. We would like to be working together on our shared issues like national security and defense and building up critical minerals and the economy of the future. And for us to do that, it would be good to have a good relationship across the border. So I think today we're in a better position than we were yesterday, though there still are many, many serious challenges, and it is going to take us some time to get to where we need to be.
Yeah, even though the tone was friendlier yesterday, the president did bring up the 51st state, though, you know, Prime Minister Carney had a good rejoinder there on some things not being for sale, will never, ever be for sale. And he did menace, yeah, exactly, never. He did menace the auto sector, saying he wanted to make it uneconomical for Canada to make cars. So the serious issues are still there, and the tariffs remain in place. So what is your sense of what the process is from this point, Premier? Because it seems like it's not quite a full USMCA-CUSMA renegotiation. It's rather... I don't know how to describe what the process is at this point other than trying to reset things and de-escalate what's doing damage on both sides of the border here.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. But what we discussed on the call today with the Prime Minister and the premiers is they've got an upcoming meeting at the G7. There's going to be upcoming opportunities to sit down and hash out, roll up the sleeves, if you will, try and put the puck in the net, to use the hockey analogy.
You're big on the Jets today, aren't you?
Overnight.
You're big on the Jets and the hockey analogy.
To game 1, round 2. The biggest nation-building project of all is bringing the Stanley Cup back to Canada, and hopefully our team here in Manitoba, the Winnipeg Jets, can do that. But when it comes to this process with the Trump administration, it's not going to happen overnight. So we have to work on our economy here in Canada. So whether it's working with Premier Ford and Premier Houston and Holt and all the others on knocking down interprovincial trade barriers, or it's these big nation building projects. You know, the one that I was raising on the call is a northern trade corridor. There's been so much talk about connecting resources in Western Canada to Tidewater and Hudson Bay. I think now's the time for us to go out into the market, the private sector, and see if that's something real, if that's something that the business community can make happen with financing. So here in Manitoba, we're working with the Indigenous nations, working on that conversation to see what the appetite is. Can we get products, whether it's ag, mining, energy products, to market in our northern port here in Manitoba, the Port of Churchill, or if there's an ability to build a transmission line and export some of our hydroelectricity to some of our neighboring provinces and territories, power that we were exporting to the U.S. You know, we're taking serious steps on that here in Manitoba. There's 500 megawatts of contracts that we decided not to renew to the U.S. We've committed 50 of those to potentially building a line to Nunavut. And there's another 450 megawatts there that we could use to energize a transmission corridor, working with probably our Western neighbors. But again, we're serious about nation building, serious about Team Canada. And I think what we've seen over the past few days, the possibility of a good working relationship between the federal government, the provinces and territories to serve you, all Canadians, I think we're heading in a good direction.
These nation-building projects, though, and I'm not passing judgment on the worthiness of any of them, but, you know, building a transmission line to Nunavut would be expensive and has some challenges. The tunnel Doug Ford wants to build, you know, in the city of Toronto, expensive and has some challenges. It's a lot of big-ticket items being put on the table right now at a time when there is already a deficit, trade uncertainty, economic uncertainty. What is the capacity of the public sector in Canada to finance and deliver on a lot of these?
Well, that's why I'm raising the private sector too. Is we gotta, listen, all of us as premiers, you know, the Prime Minister himself too, we've all got our wish lists right now. And what I think we need to do is go through that list and figure out what is going to give us the most bang for our buck in the Canadian context. What is going to be able to bring the private sector to the table to do what they do best, which is bring that creativity and innovation to unlock dollars and to create new jobs. So again, the pitch that we have is that if we can bring Indigenous partners to the table in a way where there's enthusiastic participation, if we have Tidewater in northern Manitoba with a port infrastructure, is there a way where that's going to unlock activity in Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta? By the way, if we're building an icebreaker to support that, is that driving private sector activity in Ontario, Quebec, Nova Scotia? Does that allow us to light up a transmission line to Nunavut and then they bring mines online at the same time? You know, we're bringing these projects forward because we think there's an opportunity where there's going to be a multiplier effect of unlocking the private sector investment. To me, these projects make sense when it's not just solely reliant on the public, that it's actually the private sector that's going to drive a lot of the investment and also a lot of the returns. We got a window open right now. Canadians are thinking about these big projects, thinking about how we can build up our economy together. And so we're just coming to the table with some of the ideas built on our resources, our geography in Western Canada, and what we're talking about with other nations as well, too, whether that's America, Asia, EU countries. And I think there's a real opportunity here. So I think hopefully Canadians are feeling more optimistic now than we have been for the first part of the year. Premier,
I wonder, was there any discussion or what is your sense of what Premier Danielle Smith did this week when she announced that she is willing to have a separation referendum in Alberta if enough signatures are required, and she's put a list of demands on the table for the federal government, some of which involve collisions with provincial jurisdictions, right? The idea of guaranteed access to ports in other jurisdictions that she seems to want to do on a bilateral basis with the federal government. What does this do to the Team Canada dynamic, and what do you make as a Western Premier of the move here by Danielle Smith?
Well, Western Canada is part of Canada. The West is part of what makes Canada great, and that's why I got the best hockey team in the country, the best hockey team in the NHL jersey on my back right now. And I think all Canadians will be proud. Probably all Canadians begging for me to stop being such a booster of the Jets right now. But when we're talking about the call today, there was a strong focus on national unity. You had my counterparts from other parts of the country, myself included, extending that warm and hearty handshake, saying we're all in this thing together. And you had some voices saying like there's a challenge coming out of the federal election, some post-election sentiment. But I think, how do we work through those issues? It's by building big things together. And so if we are coming to the table and saying we've got a project to get Western resources to Tidewater that's also going to spur economic activity in the east and in the northern regions of Canada, to me, that's how we get people together and working towards a bright future in Canada. If we sit around and talk politics like we do at the family dinner table, I'm sure that's a recipe for more arguments and division. But if we roll up our sleeves and we say now's the time to build big things in this country so that we can build up the Canadian economy, build up the Canadian worker, I think that's how we can make sure that every region of the country feels like they're invested in Team Canada's future.
Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew, always appreciate the time, sir. Thanks for joining us, and go Jets.
Go Jets, go.